Sunday, so I'm here with my intended to be a weekly update. I confess I have fallen off the wagon a little bit with recording some of these, so apologies for that. But today I'm here to give you kind of a catch up on what I'm reading, where I'm up to in terms of my May TBR, and what's coming up next. So, in the last week, my reading progress has kind of been shifted to focusing on a blog tour commitment. And I still have a carryover from April that I'm currently reading as of recording. But given I'm recording this about lunchtime today, I'm hopeful that I will be finishing this book at some point today. So, reading priority really kind of earlier this week went to a book called The Eagle Will Rise by M.J. Porter. That is a historical fiction book that I picked up because I was taking part in the blog tour and I had a posting commitment to share my review on Thursday this week. Now, I had intended to pick this book up a little bit sooner than I did, but me being me, I have a tendency to leave things to the last minute, and really it was kind of on Monday that I determined I had to put what I was reading aside in order to pick up The Eagle Will Rise to share my review. Now, I didn't actually, in practice, I think, get to starting The Eagle Will Rise until Tuesday, so that meant I basically had Tuesday and Wednesday to read the book and write my review on Wednesday night to post on Thursday. So, I have mentioned many times before, I thrive on a deadline, and it worked. I managed to read and review the book. I also didn't get to bed too late that night, which was a miracle. But with MJ Porter's writing, I know what I'm getting. I know I get on with it really well, and I find it really easy to read. So I wasn't frightened by the short deadline in the slightest. This was a around 320-ish page book, if I recall correctly. So nothing too scary, but obviously still quite a lot to read in 2 days. So I'm glad I managed it. But it's definitely an approachable book. This is a brand new series to me, but it features some characters I know and love from the Eagle of Mercia Chronicles series, of which I have read 9 books. Yes, I've read 9 books from that one so far. So again, knew what I was getting. Really exciting to see my favourite character from that Eagle of Mercia series as a bit older, maybe a bit more mature, and really kind of a different take on the world that I have come to know and love from the Eagle of Mercia Chronicles series. So that was my focus. I have published that review. I'll pop a link to that in my description if you want to go and take a look at that if you prefer some thoughts in kind of written format. I will follow up with a video version of that review, so if you're a watcher, you can come and catch that up later. Aside from that though, I have been carrying on with the second book of Sarah J Maas's Throne of Glass series, which is Crown of Midnight. Now, I had hoped originally to read this book in April, but unfortunately I had a bit of a slump. So it didn't happen and I had some other obligations to take care of, so my read along unfortunately got pushed to the side. But I'm very nearly there. As of recording, I am 70% through this book. It's about 430 pages. So what's 30% of that? Okay, about 120 pages. I did it for The Eagle Will Rise, so definitely achievable. So I managed to read that level of page count anyway for The Eagle Will Rise, so I know I definitely can read that in a day. And I'm motivated to finish this book because I basically want to jump into the sequel straight away. In an effort to be on time with my read along-ish, I basically want to pick up Heir of Fire straight away. There's obviously no then getting back into the world because I'm pretty much consecutively reading these. So it's going to keep it achievable. It may overlap slightly into the beginning of June, given that the next book is about 600 pages. But hopefully, being in the groove and obviously getting into the storyline from Crown of Midnight, I can just kind of take that straight through to Heir of Fire, and kind of hit that book running a little bit. So at least you've got some insight there as to what I'm going to be picking up next. Fingers crossed I can finish Crown of Midnight today. Before I started Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune, I had a blog tour obligation. Well, I still have the obligation technically, but I've been reading towards that obligation, which is actually due at the end of June. That book is Witch Hunt by B.D. Spargo, and I finished this one last night. So, I'm not always last minute, friends, just most of the time. But I have listened to that book already. I'm going to start jotting down some thoughts ready for my review, which is due on the 4th of June. And tell you what, it was actually really nice to listen to a book for a blog tour commitment. I typically pick up books for those in not necessarily physical, but more digital than anything format. But it was nice to have an audiobook version of a book to tour with, if you like. It's a little bit of a different angle, and it's not one I've done for a little while. This book is about a crime, or rather a couple of murders that take place, and it's based around the location of Pendle Hill in Lancashire. It has a witchcraft kind of lean into the story, which isn't too hard, I have to say. It's kind of the reason I picked up this book. And whilst it does have its influences on the storyline, it's not too heavy, and instead it's quite an interesting kind of crime thriller element novel that deals a lot with mental health and in different ways. And I actually really enjoyed this rep in the book, so it was different to what I anticipated, but in a good way. So I'm not going to share too much on this one just now, because obviously I have an official tour post that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. But yeah, this was an interesting listen, one I really enjoyed, and obviously it's a box to tick in terms of reading, so I have some success to report this week. Finally, the last book I have started this week is the audiobook version of Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. Now, this book is not on my May TBR, as you may or may not be aware. However, the books I have left, other than Air of Fire, are the books I pulled out of my TBR jar. 3 out of the 4 of those I already own a physical copy of, and the last book I don't own. However, I can't get an audiobook copy. At least for the 3 I own, I can't get a copy through my library for free. And for the last book, or rather, I think it was the first book actually that came out of the jars, Don't Fix Women, there is not an audiobook copy at all. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to kind of change things up and pick up one of those instead. So I had to pick up something outside of my May TBR anyway. So instead, what I'm doing is I've picked up a book I think is going to contribute towards the Goodreads Spring 2026 Reading Challenge, which is currently ongoing. Now, I am going to be posting a video about the awards I need to get to complete this challenge before the end of June, and some of the books on my TBR that are going to qualify for those. So if you're interested in taking part in that as well, there are going to be some books I'm sharing with inspiration for books that you can read towards that challenge. But it'll also give you an idea of where I'm at with the challenge, what I have left, and generally just share some of the books on my TBR. Or in a couple of cases, I've had to look at books not quite on my TBR, but sort of on my radar, if you know what I mean. So I hope you can go and check that out in a few days' time. I'm going to be posting that next week. But I have just recorded that, so it's there. I just need to get the editing process sorted, and then we're good to go. So, the book I have picked up this week, Somewhere Beyond the Sea, is hopefully going to qualify towards the Pride Month challenge. Now, I don't know if I need to complete this in June. I probably do, but to be perfectly honest, I'm slower on audiobooks anyway, so by the time I have naturally kind of finished that book, we're on the 17th of May, so I will very likely be in the beginning of June anyway before I finish this, just because I'm a bit slower. But alas, never mind, we'll see how things go. I have literally only just started this audiobook last night. I've managed to borrow it from my library, which is even better. And I think it's about 15 hours, so it's not an insignificant listen. If I factor in listening to an hour or so a day-ish, I don't do that every day. But it's a solid listen. It's one I'm looking forward to picking up anyway, because it's the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I have already read. And it's quite a cozy kind of story, as much as it has its kind of, you know, the backstories of some of the characters are, you know, not necessarily like the nicest as things go. But in terms of the kind of the current events, there's definitely cozy, there's a bit of romance elements, so I'm looking forward to picking up the sequel anyway. So even if it doesn't qualify, not the end of the world, it's a book on my TBR anyway. But we'll see if we can squeak this in to make this work for me. So in terms of carry forwards for next week, the focus is going to be Air of Fire in digital format and Somewhere Beyond the Sea in audio format. So I have plenty to be getting on with. I also have 4 books that I have to get to after those. So I'm hopeful I can get a little bit of a reading sprint going on in order to get much closer to the end of my reading list by the end of May. Fingers crossed. We'll see. What are you reading this May? Have you read any of the books I've featured in today's video, or do you like the sound of any that I've talked about? Give me a shout in the comments if you want to chat more, and I look forward to seeing you in my next catch-up video. Bye for now.